People, I'm back with another video. So, I know I've been gone for a good couple months. I know that was wrong of me, but let's start off. Let's get back to it, because I had to rewatch the anime just to get ahead of where I was. So, if I was correct, after the internships, no, not the internships, after the final exams, they were going to do, they're going to be working with they're going to be doing work studies, I believe. But in this, Bakugo and Deku. Wait, let me recap. So, I don't think we've gotten into the the hero license exam yet. So, let's get into that. Well, I'm not really gonna get into it much. I'm just gonna say they passed because that arc really it was important, but it's not really an important part. But Todoroki passes in this one because he's not really focused on other people, but he's just more focused on helping his boyfriend, Izuku Midoriya, as you know. And yes, and let me give you a quick disclaimer because it's been a minute. With Deku's Byakugan, he doesn't have a blind spot like they do in Naruto. So he has complete 360-degree vision. He also has the 100 healings on his forehead like Tsunade. So he'll be able to use that and the monstrous strength like he does, like he uses one for all. But when he fights with his monstrous strength, he fights like Sakura Tsunade. But when he's in like a small and enclosed area and there's multiple people surrounding him, he uses the gentle fist of the hyuga. And yes, his gentle fist is on par with Hiyashi Hyuga, Hinata's father. So, and a quick disclaimer, I do not own Naruto or My Hero. So, don't come for me for copyright or taking anybody's ideas. So, let's get into it. They're going to be doing the work studies. And over the time gap and yes, Bakugo still failed the exam because of his temper and attitude. But over this time, Bakugo has been trying to get back and become Izuku's friend once again. But all the pain that Bakugo put Izuku or Deku is going to go through that. All that pain, he doesn't want to relive it. He doesn't want to make that connection back. So let's get into a bonus scene of what happened that day. Deku, Bakugo says, walking up to Midoriya in the classroom as soon as everybody left. Is there something wrong, babe? Todoroki says. There's nothing wrong, Deku tells him. Go ahead without me, Midoriya says, telling Todoroki to go onto the lunch hour. He turns around and gives an icy cold glare to Bakugo. This sends a shiver down Bakugo's spine. He asks Bakugo, what does he want? Bakugo gulps and is sweating profusely. He's stuttering. He says, I want to be for friends again. He stutters out. Midoriya looks at him with his glare, colder than ice, and tells him, you put me through a life of pain and regret. I'll never make that connection again. We aren't friends. We are just associates who go to class and work together. Do you understand me, Bakugo Katsuki? And when Bakugo heard these words, it broke him. He had truly lost the one person who actually saw him for him and not his explosion quirk. But he realized all the years of bullying was because of his explosion quirk, because he thought he was the best. So after this, Bakugo is going to take some time to reflect, but he knows he can't get Deku back as a friend. So he's going to try to better himself as an entire person. So, and after that conversation, Midoriya goes to lunch and finds the Deku Squad. If you don't know what the Deku Squad is basically, and also Momo is in the Deku Squad, because why not? So the Deku Squad consists of Momo, Shinso, Sue, Ochako, and Ida, and Todoroki, and Deku, of course. He comes to the cafeteria very agitated. They ask him what was wrong, and he explained the whole encounter with Bakugo and everything. And let me give you a short little tidbit. The Baku squad is right next to him, right next to them. And Kirishima, finally having enough, not knowing what truly happened in his past, gets up and goes over there and tries to punch Midoriya. Midoriya, since having a feeling something was about to go wrong, he moved aside and watched Kirishima punch and break the table. Kirishima yells, "Why don't you forgive him? He did nothing wrong." Kirishima, not knowing what situation he was getting himself into, Midoriya takes his stance of the gentle fist and does 8 trigrams, 64 palms, and strikes 64 of Kirishima's quirk points. He then goes into explain his past with Bakugo in grave and utter detail, from him not getting his quirk at the same time as other kids, but also to when Bakugo told Midoriya to take a swan dive off a building. This made everyone change their view of Bakugo, but it also gave a reason why Midoriya was so cold and never wanted to make connections, because he didn't want to be hurt again. He didn't want to feel that same pain. So after that, he lost. He didn't want to talk to Kirishima or the other half, or the Baku squad for that fact. After that encounter with Kirishima, nobody talked to Bakugo or the Baku squad, especially the Deku squad, because he. Let me just get this straight. Deku is still our little cinnamon roll, but he's just a little icy cold. But it's all well, but it's not really well when he doesn't show his cinnamon roll side. So let's get into the airy retrieval. Let's get into the work studies. Once again, Night Eye requests for Midoriya. Well, not Night Eye. Miria requests for Midoriya to work with him in Night Eye. And in this one, Midoriya will not take anything of Night Eye's junk. So let's skip forward on. It's the end of the day where they're leaving school to go to their work studies. Mirio comes and picks up Midoriya, and they go take the train to Sir Night Eye's agency. When they get there, Sir Night Eye, as in canon, they find him tickling Bubble Girl, and then Sir Night Eye asks Mirio to step out of the room for a while. Same with Bubble Girl. Then Night Eye goes into his whole explanation of why Mirio should have the quirk instead of Midoriya. But before Night Eye could finish his explanation, Deku rose his hand and struck Night Eye in 32 of his quirk points before Night Eye even noticed. Night Eye was on the ground, was breathing heavily and holding himself up against his desk. Midoriya looked at him with his Byakugan activated, sharper than ever. His glare was so cold you could consider his eyes lavender, but they looked white. Whiter than any snow you've ever seen. He slowly walked to Night Eye and said, "Who gave you the right to choose who got the quirk? You aren't All Might. You aren't a holder of One for All. You have no say in who gets this quirk. And I developed my quirk late after I got One for All. So that means my body was able to handle both powers, and since my first power is an ocular power, it doesn't really help with physical strength and doesn't hurt me that much. With Mirio's quirk, if he took on One for All, he would have died. One for All would have slowly killed Mirio because his quirk, Permeation, gives him some types of boost in physical stamina and other physical factors, where my quirk only gives me the ability to 360-degree vision, perceive some movements, and see through walls, X-ray vision, and to see the quirk points to shut down any type of quirk emitter, mutant, any type. Transformation. I could look through a transformation quirk and see the true body of someone. That's not really of a physical quirk, it's more of a mental. And with that, I can handle one for all in my training of my quirk. You giving me your accusation of saying that Mirio would have been a better successor would have killed Mirio and you would have taken a young person's life. But also, it was All Might's choice. It was All Might who needed to choose his successor, not you. After that, Sir Nide was astonished but also looked down on himself for thinking he was the boss of something he had no say in. But after this, Midoriya didn't really have a type of respect for Nide, but he still interned with him just to get himself a power boost. So we get into when Mirio and Midoriya are on patrol, and this I'm making the retrieval arc a little like shorter, but also kind of longer. So in this, when Eri bumps into Midoriya, Midoriya activates his Byakugan on instinct. He sees a man about 3 yards away in the dark alley, and from where he can see, the man can't see them yet. So he picks up the little girl and says, "You'll be fine." They take her back to Night Eye's agency, but not before he shoots a little invisible pulse of his own chakra, marking Overhaul. And I'm giving him an ability to sense chakra because that's the thing of the hyuga. But if he places his chakra on like a seal, he gets like a little seal paper that he threw into the into the alleyway and attached itself to Overhaul, and it had some of his chakra in it, so he could track his chakra to where Overhaul was and find their base. They go back to Sonata's agency almost immediately and tell them what happened. Sonata was gonna scold Midoriya, but Midoriya told him something that was very reliable. He took an initiative immediately on, not waiting to think about the situation, but also took time to think of the situation. Let me give you an explanation if you don't understand. He was he was he thought quick and justified his actions by picking up the little girl, but also justifying his actions by calming her down so she'd be quiet. So Overhaul, sorry, I say offer one a lot. So Overhaul didn't hear her, so he thought she was already gone. But he also took the time and initiative to use his power to see if he was still there and working his way to the front of the alley, and used his power to mark him and be able to track him back to his base, making the job of the heroes a lot easier. They take him back. They take Eri back. Yes, the sweet bean. They take Eri back to Ternette's agency, and she even though she's terrified of what she has been through, tells them what they've done to her, and in this, Midoriya was disgusted by Overhaul. He thought, what human could do something so horrific to a sweet little girl? So in this moment, Midoriya made a promise. He made a promise to make sure Overhaul paid on what he did to her, for what he did to her family. So, about a week later, they've gathered all the heroes and all of the policemen to find the Yakuza base. If you don't know what the Yakuza is, it's basically the Japanese mafia. So once they found their base, they had Deku scan the entire building with his Byakugan to find his marker, the tag he marked Overhaul with. And once he scanned the building with his Byakugan, he saw there's multiple underground levels and several tombs and tunnels underneath the house. The raid began as canon, but instead of Night Eye finding the clues to get into the other parts of the house, it was Midoriya with his Byakugan. With this going on, with this going through, the Mirio does what he does earlier in canon and goes to the wall to get to Overhaul quickly. And then the rest goes up to canon until it was the big fight between Overhaul and Midoriya. He uses his Byakugan and rushes in, but also following Overhaul's movements. But he doesn't have the Sharingan. Let me give you this. He doesn't have the Sharingan. But he's mastered his Byakugan to a level where he predicts people's movements on instinct.